Which five-star players will end up signing with the Miami Hurricanes? Hi, my name is Brian Smith. I am the publisher of All Hurricanes, and today I just want to focus on a handful of kids that are elite players that Miami is going to battle for from now all the way through National Signing Day. This is a basic podcast. It's just my own thoughts. It's not meant to be any kind of inside information beyond what I give you. There's no hidden agenda here. It is just point blank. A lot of it, I will admit right up front, is gut based on what I've learned over 20, 25 years of following this stuff, being around it, talking to these players. And then I just kind of go from there. A couple of notes. This is something you'll hear me say a lot from now and probably forever. Trends. This is the number one thing. The trend with five stars is regardless of whether or not they make an early decision, it doesn't mean very much with the vast majority of them. Meaning it's cool that your school gets to list him on the commitment list, Miami or otherwise, but they are not committed. The vast majority are not. Why is that? Because they can. I know I've seen it with fan bases across the country. Miami's is no different. It's real simple. They hold the leverage because they're elite players. That's not going to change. So that's why I said in the opening statement, who do they sign? Not who do they get a commitment from. Not who they get a commitment from, who they sign. I think there will be flips in both directions. More than likely with 4 and 5-star players galore this year, more than ever before. And the Miami Hurricanes will be right in the middle of that. So with that being stated, I have my own definition of what a 5-star is. I look at it a little differently. But if you want to go by what On3 or 24/7 or Rivals or ESPN has, that's fine too. There's certainly nothing wrong with that. But I'm going to add a player that got a visit coming up with him that I think is a 5-star player, but he's an offensive guard, most likely. Probably play tackle too, but I think most likely he'll end up at guard if he does play for a team that has enough help at tackle. Isindra Afua. I might have misspelled that in some capacity somewhere along the line in one of the articles, and I'm probably definitely mispronounced that, so my apologies. But he's at O'Day up in Seattle, and it's a program that's had a rich history of high school football. They've had players go all across the country. You name it. They've had a program stop by their high school and try to recruit their young men for 30, 40 years, whatever it is. This is a kid that was kind of one of those rare YouTube phenoms, and he was like twice the size as some of the kids that I saw on some of the videos. I did a background on him when he was younger, and you see him walking out on the field, you're like, this is ridiculous. But he's also grown into his body in a sense that he understands that he needed to lose weight. He changed his body. He put in the time. He's a freaking athlete, first and foremost. Not football, athlete. And that's why I think he can play tackle too. He gets out in space. He eliminates just about anything in front of him one-on-one because he's got the feet to go laterally, even against a safety. God help any corner that has to man up against him. That's not going to end well. So this is a kid that Miami's battling. Looks like Washington is the main competition, depending on who you want to talk to. But I know Oregon and everybody else is going to recruit him to the very end. A note about him that I find unique. Penei Sewell was at Oregon when Cristobal and Mirabal, now at the University of Miami, were at Oregon as well. They recruited him there. He had a lot of success. I believe he was like the 6th pick in the draft a couple of years ago. And that is a kid that's going to obviously be somebody they say, hey, look, we can take somebody like yourself with these massive hands and feet and this quickness. We can get them to the top of the board in the NFL draft. They've proven it. And it's a kid, let's be honest, from his background, that matters. It's going to be interesting to see how much that plays. Now, Seattle and the whole West Coast has a lot of Islanders. Pacific Islanders of all kinds, Hawaii, American Samoa, all these different places. So they've got that edge, and it's closer to home. But sometimes it's too close to home. That's why out of this list, I think that Miami, in the end, I don't know if they'll get him this summer, but Afua will end up a Hurricane. It is just my pick. It is my gut. But I think the Penei Sewell part will play to Miami's advantage. Here's the other odd part with it. Miami had a 5-man class in 23 for the. If they're going to take more than 3 this year, it's got to be a dude that's number 4. They certainly don't need to take 5. But if they, I'm sure Alex Mirabal would love to tell me, no, I want 4 because he's the O-line coach, but numbers are numbers. If they take a 4th, it needs to be a guy like this. It needs to be a really talented and hopefully position flexible player. Afua could play right tackle, no question in my mind. But again, as a guard, he is dominant. The only thing that I'm curious about is how much of an importance will this coming season be for Afua, meaning Washington lost 2 games last year. They were damn good. Great passing game. They could score like crazy. They need more help on defense, and I'm sure he knows that. He lives in Seattle. But it would be cool to be like the next wave of Huskies that got that program back up to a top level. On the other side, he could go to Miami, just with the things we've talked about, be with a coaching staff that's proven with O-line, power football, and all that, and it fits him to a T, and he could get something totally different. I mean, literally, like the longest flight you can take in America is Seattle to Miami. I mean, he would be going outside the box, so it's unique. Again, I know there are other schools, but that's my guess at the end. I don't care who's leading right now, just based on my gut. I think that it'll come down to those 2. Would not be surprised if he committed to one or the other this summer, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he committed to the other one before the end of the year. Again, 4- and 5-star kids have different options. So that's somebody to kind of start with. Next up, I want to talk about Colin Simmons. Duncanville, Texas, great athlete, plays at a tremendous high school program. Miami just had him for a visit. Unfortunately, I don't think that's a good thing. You're probably like, why would that not be good for Miami? Well, here's why. Miami is in a very unique situation because Simmons, like a lot of guys, probably isn't going to decide right away. And even if he did, again, this is the same thing over and over and over again. Is he really done? Probably not. LSU, Texas, Oklahoma, all these different schools, or A&M, Oregon, Alabama, Georgia, they're all going to still come after him. LSU has been the reported leader for a long time, and they've got a visit in November. Out of this list, just the opposite of Afua, I would say he's the least likely because Miami already shot itself in the foot with the visit early. I mean, they couldn't have known that when they set it up a couple months ago, but the way that LSU visit is at the end, that makes me nervous. I don't like that. So I think he's going to end up in Baton Rouge, maybe Texas, maybe A&M, one of the others, but one of the schools that he visits in the fall is where he'll end up. Just my opinion. Sticking with defensive end, and they're in on a ton of guys. T.A. Cunningham is a unique player. Not much has been said about T.A. recently. He transferred from Los Al out in California down to Miami Central. Big kid, strong side end, 3 tech. He can play either, and he honestly doesn't care. I like Miami's chances with him in the end. He, again, is at Miami Central now. I'm curious to see what other visits he takes and what he does in the fall, but I know he's very high on Miami just from talking to him directly. That is a pick I like on the D-line. But is he a 5-star guy? Not yet, but his upside is. So I'm just going to mention him in this discussion. DN, D-tag, he can play both. Another, again, flexibility, that's really important. You got to have it, and Miami needs D-line help. They need size. TA's like 6'6", 270, something like that. I'd be surprised if they didn't get him, but, he hasn't set up all his trips yet, and the Georgias and Alabamas and Tennessees and everybody are still going to recruit him. So we'll see. T.A. Cunningham is another pick I like for the Canes, but I think there's still a long way to go. Dylan Stewart, he's probably my favorite defensive player in this class. In fact, he is nationally. He is out of Friendship Academy up in D.C. His first step is insane. Absolutely insane. He is my pick if I'm going to jump out on a limb for Miami to steal one. What do I mean by steal one? He could go anywhere. I mean, his offer list is literally wherever he wants to go. He can pick up the phone at any time, go where he wants to go. But he's also a kid that has Ohio State and Alabama, Penn State and Notre Dame and Georgia, all these schools. Depending on who you talk to, it's Ohio State or it's Alabama. I don't think it matters that much. The visit to Miami, kind of like with Colin Simmons, I don't like in the summer because I just worry about it dragging out longer and that not working out. Now, if you can get him on campus again in the fall, what I'm saying is irrelevant. But as of right now, I don't think that's the case. So I don't care which weekend it is in June. I just don't think a 5-star kid is going to remember that as much in September, October, November, and then if you maybe even an early December visit for some of these kids. That's going to be another theme. Finally, with him, I just don't know enough about him. I've never spoken to him, and I'm a glass half empty guy. So I'm going to pick Miami not to get him, but at least finish with a hat on the table. They need to do something this year. They need to have a splash, something different about their final record, literally their record, to get a kid like that. I know that Ohio State's going to be good in Alabama and stuff, so I'm taking the easy road, but I'm going to say Miami's going to finish in the Final Five, but don't get him. It's just kind of where I'm at. Sticking with the defensive line, let's talk about Justin Scott out of St. Ignatius in Chicago. That recruitment is all over God's green earth, and I'm being kind. I've heard everything you can imagine, and I have incredibly good sources on this one, but they're still crossed. Part of that is going to be bias. They're from different schools, different fan bases, different reporters all over. But that also probably means the kid is a bit crossed, meaning he's just not sure what the hell he wants to do. Is there anything wrong with a 17-year-old not being sure when he has 40 or 50 offers? Of course not. Justin Scott is the rare 6'5", 310 kid who could literally play strong side defensive end. That is not normal. I don't remember the last defensive lineman I said that about in high school. But that's also going to bring Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Georgia. I want to say Alabama's off here. I can't remember. Miami, who's perceived to be the favorite. And there's probably others that he would consider taking a visit to as well. I just don't know how that one's going to end. It is one of the more unique ones I've seen. I do think he will commit to Miami this summer. I've heard that from even people that don't want him to commit to Miami this summer. So that's the first thing. Where he ends up, I don't know. That recruitment is really bizarre, and he has some very unique pieces pulling him in different directions for different reasons. That I do know. It's hard for a 17-year-old. I wouldn't venture a guess on where he's going to sign, but I will say Miami will get a commitment. That's all I'm going to jump on with that. Aydin Breland, another 5-star defensive lineman, modern day, California. If we're going to talk about the closest thing to Justin Scott, Breland would be that guy. Very well coached. I mean, he's a modern day. If you know anything about high school football nationally, one could make the argument, and in the last 30 years, they've been the most dominant program. You could make that argument, and it would be bona fide. The Monarchs are still churning out players with technique. He's more of a polished product, just as an example to Scott. Very similar in size. Can play 3-tech, 1-tech. He could be a 4-eye in a 3-4 defense. He's a nasty football player. He's exactly what Miami and Mario Cristobal needs. I just know from following recruiting in that school, I've had a fascination with that program for a long time because they're just so consistent. As a general rule, when Southern Cal wants a kid from that program, they don't miss. At least not very often. There have been some exceptions, but 75% of the time, they're going to hit home. It's just kind of the way it's been for a very long time. So I'm curious to see what happens down the road with his visits. I haven't heard anything other than his Miami trip went good. Well, of course it did. It's a Miami visit. It'd be hard to screw that up. It's a beautiful campus, beautiful city and all that. I'm sure it went well. But at the same time, I'm really worried about USC for Miami because they're going to be good again. He's right down the road from it. You got Caleb Williams there. He's going to be in the Heisman race again. And, of course, he just won the Heisman. That one makes me nervous. It's a little bit like a Fua, though. Does he want to just stay home, or does he want to go all the way across the country and just try something different? Sometimes kids, again, I can't stress this enough, and there's nothing the hometown school can do about it if it happens. Too close. Proximity can work against you. And it's happening to Miami right now with several kids in the last 10, 15 years. They just want to leave South Florida. It doesn't matter who the head coach is, what the record is, nothing. They're leaving. That's just part of it. And there's a lot of California kids that have done that too, going to the SEC and stuff. Will Aydin be one of those kids? I don't know him well enough to know, but my gut tells me he's going to end up playing for Southern Cal. Now, defensive line is obviously Miami's primary focus. But on defense in general, they just need really good players. They've got to ensure it up, and they've done quite a bit of that with the portal. They've done a great job with the portal. Miami did tremendous. But I also think that they need to hit some home runs at certain spots. And one that's been undervalued, myself included, I'm guilty of this, that they haven't done enough with yet because they're swinging for the fences, is Zaquan Patterson. He's one of the local kids. He's at Chaminade. And I don't know where he's going to sign, but if I had to guess, I would say Miami for the following. Just from talking to him, knowing how he ticks, very blunt, A to B guy, very intelligent, by the way, very intelligent. And Miami's done just a tremendous job of recruiting him. Myself and several other analysts, we talk amongst ourselves. This is a kid that does a great job of just actually answering questions during an interview, unlike a lot of kids from South Florida who just hide their hand. Auburn, Miami, Florida State. There's been a handful of schools at one point in time or another that caught his attention. Georgia, but they've kind of fallen off. But Miami's been the one consistent. I'm going to go with the Canes to get him, but I don't think it'll be early. I think he's one of those kids who he will use deductive logic, meaning he will take all the data from the visits and then make a decision. Just my opinion. Next, I also think that it'll be right around Thanksgiving to the end, just to be specific. He may not go to signing day, but it'll be pretty darn close. Patterson, great kid, but he's going to want to make the decision to be done. So we'll see. Maybe he decides on signing day with Joshisa Trader. And since we brought that up, let's talk about JoJo. Trader is the kid that I have said numerous times at all Hurricanes and at other places that I had an interview with him and an off-the-record conversation. And he just told me flex. I asked him about timeline, and he said, it's going to be late. He just kind of looked me dead in the eye and said, around signing day, like this, there's no doubt about it. He knew that back in January. So I told him the last time I saw him, I said, I'm not going to interview you. There's nothing to talk about here. He just went up to Florida State for their camp, kind of walked around and goofed around and stuff, but he's going to do most of his stuff in the fall. I don't care if he takes one or two visits right now. The only two schools that I think matter are Florida State and Miami. The wild card would be Ohio State if he wanted to follow Jeremiah up there to play with the Buckeyes. I mean, it'd be kind of hard to turn down Jeremiah Trader. But the thing that I think is most important with him is what I was talking about with Aydin Breland. Does he want to just get out of Dodge? He's from the city of Miami. Some of the kids want to stay and some of them want to leave. I don't think this will really be all that much about which school recruits him better. I don't think this is going to be much about which school has the opportunity to wow him on a visit. Trader's already seen everything, and he knows both staffs very well. He doesn't have to talk to either one of them. He pretty much knows. So barring staff changes, which could happen, that's the other part of this. I'm not even going to guess on that. It's impossible. So I'm just assuming all the staff stay the same, which they never do. But that's why you have projections. If Trader wants to stay home, it's Miami. If he doesn't, it's Florida State. I think it's going to be that. I know coaches don't want to hear it that way. They want to be the reason a kid picks a school. But he already knows both staffs really well. I think he's just trying to feel out where he wants to be. He's a very easygoing guy, and he's not trying to pick favorites based on anything. He's just going to use his gut. And for that, there's some say Florida State leads. I've heard others say Miami. I say he's just going to make a last-minute decision based on his gut. I wouldn't pick one way or the other on JoJo Trader if you put a gun to my head. I have no idea. The reason I bring up Ohio State again, that would be the outlier. Every now and then a kid just wants to do something completely different, get outside the box. So maybe he goes to Ohio State. They're always an option for a top receiver. So we can talk about that. If you want to, how do I put it? If you want to really go down the list, it's kind of hard not to talk about Jeremiah Smith next, but I want to save him for last. There's a couple of kids that I think are also important, in other aspects that are right on that verge. Ricky Knight, he's a corner out of Benjamin School up there. That's another Florida State Miami battle. I just want to mention these. Jericho Johnson's out of California. He's a kid that he could pick any of the Pac-12 schools. He could go to one of the Texas schools, Oklahoma, something like that. We're going to see on the visits. I don't know well enough yet on him, but I want to mention him. And I also think that they're not going to stop recruiting like Chauncey Bowens and a few of the other guys. I know he's not rated as one, but Elias Rudolph, who moved back up to Ohio, I was told. He was at Deerfield Beach, originally from Ohio. He's coming in for a visit. He is a dude. I don't care what his ranking is. He's a top 50 kid conservatively. Tremendous football player. Miami would do very well to get him. Never have enough pass rushers, and he's 6'4", 215, and ultra twitchy. The other kid, though, there's no way to avoid it, is Jeremiah Smith. I always get asked about him. I've said it a million times. I think he's going to Ohio State. Nobody that I know thinks he's going somewhere different. And these are people that live in South Florida, that are around his program, that work out with him, that have coached him, whatever. Everybody I've spoken to has said Ohio State, so why would I pick anybody else? Doesn't really make any sense to me. That's unfortunate for Miami, but he's just one of those kids that he wants to go somewhere that it is factual, that the decision to play at college, whatever, is based on what they have done at his position, not projection, factual. And Ohio State has that, and Miami doesn't. There's no way to really change that. So that's based on a conversation I had with him. That's based on what other people have told me. I think he's going to Ohio State. Miami's going to try to flip him, obviously. You have to. He's great. But it is what it is. If he doesn't go to Ohio State, I think he goes to Miami. But I just think he's going to end up with the Buckeyes. The only other five-star I want to mention, and I haven't talked to him for over a month now, is Jordan Seaton, the offensive lineman out of IMG Academy. He's the only other one. I think that there's a few others that are on their list. I'll just leave it alone at that. But I don't think they got that great a shot at most of the guys on the top of my head. Jordan Seaton really likes Miami, and he would fit in well. Big personality, very devoted, A to B. He fits Alex Mirabal with personality. And I don't know which team I would peg as the leader, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, Miami. But that's going to play out later. He was overwhelmed with the attention he got after he reshaped his body. I talked about him recently at All Hurricanes in an article, and that is just an incredible specimen. So if they can get him on campus a couple of times, and it's close enough, he'll probably take an unofficial in the fall beyond an official visit. Man, that would be like, especially if they get him and Afua after the class they had, they would be in great shape. He doesn't know where he's leaning, and nobody I've talked to has an interest in picking. I'm sure some people have opinions, but I haven't spoken to him. But Seaton is a guy that is absolutely capable of walking into a major Power 5 and playing early. Special player. So that's the last guy I really want to discuss because, like I said, most of the kids that are 5 stars, if I didn't mention them, I don't think they're coming to Miami and or maybe I missed one, but doing this off the top of my head pretty much, I just think those are the guys. Justin Scott is probably the most unique recruitment to kind of summarize. JoJo Trader and Knight and a few of the other South Florida kids, T.A. Cunningham. There's some that Miami's going to get. It is just really hard. But again, beyond my picks, the thing that I want anybody that watched this to take away, it's not about who commits this summer, which everybody keeps, why aren't they getting commitments? Well, who cares? The kids need to take their trips. You're better to let them take them now. Anyway, commit after you have all the data. Especially with South Florida kids, they're fickle. They take one trip and commit. They're going to take visits later anyway. You're just putting the X on your back as the team that's, needs to be knocked off by the other school. So you're better not to get the commitment, in my opinion. Finally, Miami's in pretty good shape. Their visit list, they did a tremendous job of getting a lot of great players in. I don't think they're going to have any problem ending up with the top 10 class conservatively. And I went on record with Alex Dono saying I think top 6 or top 7 is probably about right. Which one of these, if they get Breland and Scott or something, then it's a top 3, top 4 class. So they're right there, man. They are right there. So please like this podcast. Please share it. Please hit that notification bell. And above all else, comment. Let me know what you think. And please give me any kind of insight that you want, whether you liked it, you didn't like it, some of the guys you'd like to hear about. I just kind of wanted to do a rundown today, but everybody's curious about the big names, so I gave my opinions. Everybody have a great day.